from the last election in 2024 to 2026 election, the opponent of Thomas Massie for the 4th congressional district of Kentucky had a 356% increase. Most ever, never been done before, never that much of a jump of that many people who didn't vote to people who voted this time. They want you to believe that it's the Trump machine. That's the way the narrative of the Democrats, they're selling it. The CNNers are selling it. It's all about Donald Trump and whatnot, but it isn't. It's more to it than that. There it is. I think what people have to do is start looking at the players that are involved, right? I think a lot of people, where I do feel, I don't want to say it's a mishap, but I think when we concentrate too much on Israel, because AIPAC did put that tweet out there congratulating the opponent of Thomas Massie. And like I said, for me, this is way too much where they're showing too much of themselves. Who's the Oz man behind the curtain actually operating things? I believe it is the Epstein cabal, whatever you want to call it, the ruling class. There's other interest involved when it comes to war and all these things going on. Like I said, Coca-Cola gets to charge $8 for a Coca-Cola that's drank in Iraq than they do to a Coca-Cola that's sold over here. The industry of war is a racket. Smedley Butler is huge and it's crazy. So I do believe it is this global cabal. However, I think we need to pay attention to the players that are involved that nobody's talking about, Matt. Could you give me your share screen real quick? So we always talk about the companies that are involved who own the software and the hardware of the machines. I go to Latin America all the time. It's very, very simple and very transparent. It's one day of voting, and 99.9% of the elections I've been to, all the 100% of elections I've been to all of them, 7 Latin American countries, where you have to go to your designated precinct at your designated table where there's 400 ballots there, and they take a ballot off and you go to vote. It puts in the ballot box, and however many ballots are cast have to match the number of ballots left over to equal the amount of ballots that are right there. They then take those ballots out in front of everybody and count them. There's no names on them, so you don't know who voted for them. You just know the person signed off to go and vote. So they protect the voter. They protect the process. The people get to witness it. In the United States, it's different. We're using hardware and software out there, right? And there are different types of hardware and software. There's a big thing between a machine that lets you vote, right? A voting machine versus a counting machine. And in certain counties in the 4th Congressional District of Kentucky, they have a central tabulation room and where they count the ballots. And in certain parts of the county, they have where it's counted at the precinct, posted on the door, and then reported to central tabulation. But there are 2 main machines they use in this election. One is called an e-scan, right? And if you look at this real quick, Matt, over here, the one on the right over there is an e-scan. You get a ballot, you mark the ballot, you put it into the machine. The machine then tells you what you're voting for. You have a chance to look at it to make sure it's right. Then you put it back into either that machine or another machine where your ballot is held. So it's a ballot marking device. You're using it to mark the ballot. It spits it out. You get it. You turn it in. Different than the tabulation machine, which is also by the same company. But the one in the middle, right, that's an e-slate. It's called a DRE machine. I've been talking about for years that these need to be eliminated. They are touch screen machines, Matt, in which you vote in. So you go in as the voter, you hit the buttons, boom, boom, boom. It gives you a receipt and tells you who you voted for, but you don't know if you're going to get that number counted properly because we don't have access to the software. And this company is called Hart Intercivic, which is one of the big 4. They're all around the country. They're located, the central quarters are in Texas, but they're one of the big companies that sell hardware and software to all these different districts, all these different states. For Thomas Massie, this is the company that was used predominantly over there. Who are they owned by? They're owned by this company right here. It's called HIG Capital. HIG Capital was started, I think, about maybe 30 years ago or something, right? But it was started by 2 different guys. Now, I just want to say something. They own the company that owns the hardware. They owns the software. It's a private equity company, Matt. So you don't know who's the investors who actually own the hardware and software to the machines that we are using.
Wow.
The guy who started it, his name is Sam Khan. Sam Khan right there happens to be the managing director of Blackstone.
Of course.
So Blackstone owns the hardware, owns the software, private equity. You don't know who owns the main stakes, who's involved. It's all secretive in a publicly funded election. And the last piece is, well, wait a second. What about this company here? This company is called Modern Litho. Well, Modern Litho has the contract for the printing of the ballots for the 4th Congressional District of Kentucky. Modern Litho also had a guy by the name of Sam Khan work for them for years and help raise the company's status. He's the managing director of the private equity firm of Blackstone. So pretty much, Matt, I put this tweet out there. To accept the results of the American elections, that the results of an American election are valid, you must trust the private equity firm with proprietary software and ownership claims. In other words, you don't know. I'm going to take this off now so we don't have to share it anymore. You don't know who the controlling the software they use is proprietary. The ownership is proprietary. And all we know is the guy who started the firm that owns the machines that use the count in the Thomas Massie's 4th Congressional District works for Blackstone, and he also has stake and interest in the ballot company as well. We have a completely captured system. I can't prove that it's rigged because I can't look at the software and show you. We can look at the math and say something's not right. Yeah. But here's the thing. You can't prove to me that it is real because you have to say we're just taking the word of a private equity company like Blackstone, and we all know who Blackstone is about. This is what I say, Matt, right? This goes above Israel. This is like the global fucking elites. Israel's a part of it, right? Just like the United States is part of it. It's all these private equity firms that go everywhere around the world and do all these things. There you have it. That's who's running that election.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. All we can do is look at the numbers, but you can't. That's it. Then they can they can gaslight us. And say that we're making this stuff up. And we've been seeing this years and years and years. This goes back to 2000 when I first got interested in how election rigging goes. And you just follow the paper trail, you follow the companies, and it's all these private companies that we're supposed to trust in our democracy, right? And then you have the left saying we're holding on to democracy, and they don't see any of this. And if you're a Trump voter and you're pointing this out, you're called all these names and you're banished from the party, and the whole thing's just So we have to show people this stuff. Here's another number from Ryan Mata. So you had this increase in voter turnout. So we showed you guys that, right? This 356%, which has never happened. This has actually happened. It's never happened once in any primary election in U.S. history going back to the 1970s. The total voter turnout in a primary increased over 100% from these last 2 years. From 52,000 to 105,000. That was the total. Yeah. This has also never once happened in a primary election since 1970. This is the kicker, Pasta. This is the kicker. So Thomas Massie loses by 10,000-ish votes. Ed Garin receives 10,854 mail-in votes on the final day. Where have we heard mail-in vote problems before?
Yeah, let me stop you though real quick.
Okay.
Thomas Massie did get 8,000 something change absentee ballots too as well. So that's why it's hard to look at that particular math. They each got around 20% of their vote in absentee ballot. You know what I'm saying? This is a hard way to rig the election through mail-in ballots. I'm not saying that they couldn't have stuffed mail-in ballots, and they probably did. It's a death by 1,000 cuts. You know what I'm saying? But it's also, they have areas too as well to stuff the machines, cluster the machines with going around the mail-in ballots, especially when the head guy of the software company in the county who controls the counting mechanism also has stake in the ballot company too as well. But people are pointing out the fact that, well, Thomas Massie also had 8,000 absentee mail-in ballots too as well, saying that they had a little bit less than 20% of their actual vote. So,
Okay. So
I'm not saying that it couldn't be a part of it, but that is something to consider where a lot of people, I would say also too, Matt, if you talk to Kelly Lane, and she's absolutely right when she talks about this, the closed primary system is really messed up because it's a publicly funded election. It's funded by the people, and then you're shutting one group out, and you're saying you have to choose A or B. That shouldn't be the way. If it's a publicly funded election, and that's the thing, if the guy's going into Congress, he's going to serve both sides of the aisle when it comes to the voters, right, of the constituency. So he should be, he should be accountable to govern as a whole in Congress. So why would you have a closed primary? Inside of that district where Thomas Massie ran, there's well over 60,000 independent voters that couldn't vote in that election. And he would have mopped up the independent voters, especially when he lost by a little bit over 10,000. When you're leaving 60,000 voters that are shut out and can't even vote for him. I think the closed primary versus open primary system is another form of voter suppression that we should talk about.
Yeah. But it all comes back to the money and where that money comes from and who controls. So once you can start controlling these apparatuses, like mail-in voters is another way to do it. Well, everything you broke down, that's the stuff we should be angry about. We should be yelling about it. But like you said, we can't prove it 100%. What we can do is we can just look at these public discussions that these Zionists are having with each other, trying to still play victim here as they rig this thing. And they talk about how the money is the thing. This is John. I don't know if you saw this. This is John Podhoretz. He's actually, as he plays victim here of we have to all of us Zionists have to get together and do whatever we can to defeat these people, these anti-Semites like Thomas Massie, and he's celebrating the role that this money plays into getting the outcome, which is the complete opposite of what a democracy is supposed to look like. Here he is.
It is a good thing if Massie and the people like him and others believe that if you cross the line into anti-Semitism, Jews are going to use the power that we have openly to go for you. Because what other recourse is there? Are we just going to sit here and take it, beg for scraps, hope that nice people are nice to us? The Democratic Party is going explicitly anti-Semitic. We can see it happening. People are getting benefits, as Seth says, for being anti-Semites. That seems to be part of an appeal in primaries to the left in the party. We have to use what means there are at our disposal. And in my view, and I'm going to put it blank, that is Jewish money. There is an enormous amount of Jewish money in politics, by which I mean Jewish donors, wildly disproportionate, not only charitably, but politically. And when I say charitably, I mean nobody really knows the numbers. Jews make up 2% of the population. According to some studies, Jews make up 20% of the charitable contributions made in the United States annually. That is a tenfold. Think about that. Think about the disproportion of that. And in politics, it's pretty close also. And if that money isn't used, why do people give money? Because they want to influence elections to get people elected who reflect their views. Well,
so he's admitting to us how to rig an election is with money. And you take a 2%. If you take him for his word, I mean, we're not saying it, he's saying it. He's saying 2% of a population can have 20% influence on a general election anytime. And that should happen. If you don't do it, then you're a fool not to do it, not to rig an election with your money, to elevate a small percentage of people and the things they want versus what the other 98% want. That's just, so he's just telling you that that's okay. And we should understand that is clearly giving it away right there, right? Pasta, I mean, and it's not necessarily for this election alone or anything. This is just the mindset of democracy is who has the biggest checkbook. That's democracy. And he's saying that's how it should be. So and they're saying it out loud. This isn't us saying this. We're just saying that this is the mindset of a lot of people in this country who are looking at probably what we're talking about right here on this show and saying, you know what? So what? It's a game. Politics is a game. Whoever gets the most money wins. So, oh, well, cry me a river, right?
Well, I mean, it's kind of vague. First of all, he's making a very big distortion between Jews and Zionists. Again, this still keeps going on. And, you're not talking about Jewish money. You're talking about Zionist money, plain and simple, right? Because there are Jews, and there's a lot of them, who don't believe in the greater Israel project. And I don't know what percentage, and I get the fact that, the country of Israel has been propagandizing their children for quite some time. And even Norm Finkelstein said it to me when I was doing the Jimmy Dore show and had him on, that it's a different country today than it is when 30, 40 years ago, where there was a lot more sympathy towards the Palestinian people. There was in 1960s, I think people were like, there were a lot of Jewish people who were like, all right, just take this deal and stop. But the Zionists wanted to keep expanding, keep on demonizing the Palestinians. And I think it's a different, country. So I hate, once again, the distortion that this man is bringing in, and the fact that nobody's pushing him back on, well, wouldn't you consider it? They're not being anti-Semitic. I've never seen Thomas Massie be an anti-Semite. Never, ever. Anti-Zionist. Yes.
Craig, him using the word Jewish money makes my point. I make it all the time on the show. I talk to you about this. I talk to Jay about this. I say this all the time. I'm sick and tired of dancing around that they're going to call us anti-Semitic if we say the wrong thing, when they clearly are saying the wrong thing on purpose, because they have to have that role in order to have Israel first policy, in order for Israel to get away with crimes against humanity constantly, every single effing day. They have to have anti-Semitism. They create it with their language. So they can say it. I'm not going to waste 30 seconds or 2 minutes of my time correcting them. F that.
No. Well, I'm going to call that shit out all the time. I apologize, but I'm going to continue. No. I'm saying, I get you. But here's the thing. For our audience, Kentucky, for our audience to understand that that's the game. Like, they're giving it away right there. So we don't need to dwell on it. They say he said the wrong thing. What if we say? But if we say, do we have to correct them now? We got to correct them now when they say no. They're doing it on purpose. It's always going to be. They're always going to call us anti-Semitic for challenging Israel. They tell you. They tell the world that conflating Israel and Zionism is the same thing. They tell you that it's anti-Semitic to say Zionism sucks. No. They tell you this. Yeah. They don't give a shit. Well, here's food for thought, right? So we even talk about AIPAC having a lot of Christian members too as well. It's not, just specifically or primarily Jewish. There's a lot of Christians in AIPAC and stuff like that.
Right.
Well,
right.
All right. So you said AIPAC had all this control. They did whatever, 20% of the money they spent, whatnot. And Kentucky's 75% Christian. 75% Christian. I mean, that means I don't even know what percentage it is Jewish. It is 75% Christian. So the Christians are just as much as an accomplice, right? Or a patsy or sorts, whatever you want to call it, but they're walking hand in hand, because they are also a part of this whole thing. I get the fact that Israel was going to lobby against Thomas Massie, but the state is 75% Christian. The majority of the voters that voted in this election were Christian, identify as a Christian.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
So they know their demographic. Yeah. They know exactly how to spend their money. On. Yeah. They know how to spend their money and on what. And all the ways we talk about just in this segment, we talk about all the ways to rig an election. We should list them all. We should do a bullet point so people understand that there's more than one way, right? And they do them simultaneously. And one of the ways, and I think this is the hardest one for people to digest, because it kind of says something about us and how we are kind of susceptible when we're on our social media. We're susceptible to be told something that we think and believe when it wasn't our idea, implanted ideas in our heads. So they know exactly how to get to the Christians in Kentucky. They know exactly how to do it. Yeah. So it's a rigged election by making them think that they're voting for themselves, but they're voting against their own interests. That's part of the rigging, right?
Yes, it is. When you talk about part of the rigging, I think it's also important we should do a pie graph, because the propaganda of the media is a part of rigging that election, right? They control the media, they control the narrative, they can put all this stuff out there. You showed it beautifully the way CNN is trying to kind of frame this story. What's going on over here? And then you have the guy come on, and of course CNN is going to talk about it being about Trump and the evil Thanos that he is, and how, and not make it and not talk about the system itself. And they always want to do this party thing, but they didn't want to talk about the system. But just like the fact that we have a problem with our system in the United States, the election system is the big problem, is the fraud itself. And there's a piece of it where they have the media and they actually propagandize you, and they kind of control everybody, and they dupe people and they lie. So they persuade people with their propaganda, media, all that other stuff. Then there's the ballot access part. They control who runs and who can't run, right? If you have a valid candidate that has a chance to come on up, they won't even allow that person on the ballot. And they do it all the time. Ballot access is another thing. So the mechanism, and then the fraud comes into play. They want to cheat as little as possible, right? They want to make the game they want to cover up their trails as much. They don't want to make it as so obvious. But this one is so hard to fucking to hide right now. You saw the media, Kalshi. Where did Kalshi switch this over so fucking fast? They have insiders, right? So they knew somebody leaked something or the bettors went a different way, and they knew that. That's what happens in a horse race. If long shots, people start dumping money on it, the odds come down. Who was dumping money on this election? They knew it was flipped real quick. They waited to make their bet. They made the bet, and all of a sudden the odds started flipping down. Then they started flipping the votes. And there's many ways they could have done this, and it's almost impossible now because also I didn't talk about Hart, the Hart company, InterCivic, is also the ones who brought apart the model of vote centers. And that's where in California, where you're at, you don't have to go to your designated precinct. They set up this whole system, and that means there's internet involved where you can go wherever you want to any votes. It's another form of erasing the audit trail in elections, and that's what it was. The perfect storm over here, Matt. It was the perfect fucking storm. They gamed the fucking system by making sure it was a closed primary, shutting out voters that they knew would vote for Thomas Massie, that he would grab those independents and stuff. They shut that out. They used the media to say, oh my God, anti-Semite, yada, yada, yada. And then they had all the players involved that owned all the software and the hardware to control the election. You just got to believe the numbers they tell you. And if I'm a dishonest guy, but I'm telling you, you can trust me now, you can trust me now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Well, look, I'll just ask you this before we move on here. Pastor, do you think that Thomas Massie has any sort of element of revolution happening right now? Any sort of hint of we talk about Bernie Sanders and we're going to take on all these different things and we're going to go independent, perhaps a thing Bernie never did. Is that something you could see in his trajectory? And if he does decide to run independent for the 2028 presidency, would that even matter?
No, it won't matter other than it will change the discussion. You know what I'm saying? It's unfortunate that Thomas Massie is not kind of like, he should have hired somebody like me or one of the activists like me who would have said, all right, this is what we're going to do. And as soon as it comes out, we're going to expose these elections for who they are. This isn't just about AIPAC messing with an election. This is about the fact that the global elites in any place and in any of these elections in this country can make sure they shut out the grassroots and get somebody involved. I think Thomas Massie is great for a conversation starter. In other words, I saw Thomas Massie at the Libertarian Convention, and we started talking and disagreeing, but kind of coming to the same solution about Latin America, about why so many people are coming. I think it's important to have that part of the discussion there. I love when Thomas Massie got up into I forgot the guy who pulled the fire alarm when he got up into his face about gun control, and they started having that conversation there, and it got captured. So, I mean, it does matter to have the conversations we need to have because there's a lot of great things about Thomas Massie. I don't agree with everything he does is his ideology completely, but I do hope he does run because we need to have those discussions. I don't know. Maybe he can be the vice president to Judge Napolitano, and they can run on the Libertarian ticket. Who knows?
Yeah.
I think that's necessary right now because our civil liberties are under attack more than anything. And it doesn't make a difference who you are, race, religion, creed, or color. If they take your voice, they take your freedom. And at the end of the day, we need to fight for that.